Welcome to Readings in English, the channel where you learn English through deep, emotional stories that capture the heart and expand the mind. Here, every story is crafted not only to improve your language skills, but also to take you on a journey filled with human experiences, life lessons, and unforgettable moments. Whether you're just starting or looking to deepen your understanding, our stories bring English learning to life in ways that are meaningful and inspiring. So grab a seat, relax, and let's dive into another story together. In today's story, The American Dream, we follow Miguel, a dedicated father who moves his family to a new country in search of a brighter future. Facing language barriers, cultural challenges, and personal doubts, Miguel's journey is one of resilience, love, and the hope for a better life. Through each struggle and small victory, he shows us the power of perseverance and family bonds. This story will not only help you practice your English, but also connect with universal themes of sacrifice and courage. Let's begin. Miguel tightened his grip on his son Gabriel's hand as they stepped out of the airport, taking in the unfamiliar skyline of their new home. The city stretched before them, towering buildings reaching into the sky, buzzing with life in a way that felt both thrilling and overwhelming. His wife, Isabella, held their daughter Sophia close, whispering soft reassurances in Spanish as they approached the taxi stand. Every sound felt louder, every color more vibrant, yet his heart pounded with a blend of excitement and worrying. The taxi driver spoke in rapid English, and Miguel could only nod, feeling a sting of embarrassment. He relied on the few phrases he'd practiced back in Guatemala, but they slipped from his mind the moment he needed them. Inside the cab, he observed the streets flying past, trying to soak in every detail, wondering how they would fit into this unfamiliar world. Gabriel's small voice interrupted his thoughts as he pointed at a row of storefronts lined with bright neon signs. Miguel smiled, hiding his nerves with a reassuring squeeze of his son's hand. They reached their apartment building, a tall, weathered structure amidst rows of similar buildings, each with stories to tell. Miguel helped Isabella gather their bags, each suitcase holding the remnants of their past life, memories folded between the fabric and tucked in the edges. Climbing the stairs to their floor, he felt the weight of responsibility press on him more than ever. He was determined to make this work, to provide his family with opportunities they could never have in Guatemala. Once they were settled, Miguel took a deep breath, looking around the small, bare space that now represented a fresh start. He knew that every decision, every step he took from here mattered. Gabriel and Sophia's futures depended on it. That night, after the children were asleep, he sat by the window, watching the city lights blink in the distance. Isabella joined him, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "It will be hard," she whispered, as though speaking aloud might shatter the delicate hope they shared. Miguel nodded, taking in her words. but he also felt the stirrings of determination within him. They had left everything behind to give their children a future, and no matter how daunting, he couldn't let them down. Tomorrow, he would begin his search for work and find his place in this city. For tonight, however, he allowed himself to be vulnerable, quietly acknowledging the challenges that lay ahead. Morning arrived with the sounds of bustling traffic and voices drifting through the thin apartment walls. Miguel dressed carefully, choosing his best shirt as though the fabric could somehow strengthen his resolve. He kissed Isabella goodbye and promised Gabriel he would bring back a special treat from his first day out in the city. As he stepped into the busy streets, he felt a mixture of anticipation and dread. English surrounded him, flowing effortlessly from the people around him, a constant reminder of the gap he needed to bridge. Miguel's first stop was a construction site he had researched from a notice on their building's community board. He had experience in carpentry back in Guatemala, and he hoped it would be enough to impress the foreman. With his heart pounding, he approached the site manager, attempting a friendly smile. The foreman glanced up and, seeing Miguel's hopeful expression, greeted him curtly, his words quick and clipped. Miguel felt the warmth drain from his face as he struggled to understand. Trabajo, work, carpintero, he managed, trying to convey his experience through a mix of Spanish and hand gestures. The foreman's eyes narrowed, a flicker of impatience crossing his face before he turned to his clipboard. Miguel watched as the foreman shook his head, gesturing dismissively. The rejection was swift, almost casual, yet it hit Miguel with the force of a punch. Feeling defeated, he thanked the foreman in broken English, retreating from the site with a heavy heart. As he walked back toward the main road, he noticed other signs, each promising work if only he could understand them. But the phrases blurred, the meanings lost to him, and with each failed attempt, his frustration grew. Hours passed as Miguel moved from place to place, his confidence eroding with each rejection. By late afternoon, he found himself in a small park, his legs sore and his spirit battered. He watched parents playing with their children, a reminder of what he was trying to secure for his own family. He thought of Gabriel and Sofia, of the future he had promised them, and his chest tightened with a resolve he hadn't felt before. Returning home at evening, Miguel wore a brave face, even as Isabella's concerned eyes searched his expression. He sat down, holding Gabriel close as the boy asked if he'd found a job. Miguel forced a smile, promising that he was just beginning his search and would try again tomorrow. Later, he confided in Isabella, sharing his frustration and the sting of failure. She listened, her hand resting over his, offering silent support. Together they sat in the dim light of their apartment, knowing that this was only the beginning. Chapter 3. Determined to learn 3,000 words, Miguel woke early the next morning, the weight of yesterday's disappointments lingering. Despite his weariness, he was resolved to find a way forward. As he prepared breakfast for his family, Isabella mentioned the local community center that offered free English classes. She suggested that Miguel attend, even if it meant sacrificing a few hours of job searching. Miguel was hesitant at first. He felt a pang of pride. He had come here to work, not to sit in a classroom, but Isabella's gentle encouragement pushed him to consider it. After breakfast, he gathered the little courage he had left and walked to the community center, a small building painted with bright murals depicting the diversity of the neighborhood. Inside, Miguel found a mixed group of people seated around tables, each with a look of determination similar to his own. The teacher, Mrs. Collins, was a friendly woman in her 50s with a kind smile that seemed to understand the challenges her students faced. She welcomed him warmly, sensing his hesitation. Mrs. Collins began the lesson by introducing basic phrases, moving through greetings and simple questions. Miguel listened intently, repeating the words under his breath. The unfamiliar sounds were strange on his tongue, and he stumbled over the pronunciation. Embarrassment crept in, but he forced himself to focus, reminding himself why he was there. As the lesson progressed, Miguel began to feel the weight of the language barrier. He realized just how many words he didn't know, how far he had to go. The English language felt foreign, with its confusing rules and unpredictable pronunciations. Each time he felt himself faltering, he thought of Gabriel and Sophia and the dream he had for them. By the end of the class, he managed to say a few sentences, clumsy but passable. Mrs. Collins approached him after the lesson, offering words of encouragement. She shared a story about her own immigrant grandparents who had come to America with nothing but hope. Her story, simple yet powerful, resonated with him, giving him a spark of motivation. Returning home at evening, Miguel shared his experience with Isabella, his voice filled with a mixture of exhaustion and hope. For the first time since arriving, he felt a glimmer of possibility, a sense that maybe, just maybe, he could bridge this divide. The following days brought a rhythm to Miguel's life. Every morning, he would search for job opportunities, visiting construction sites and asking about openings. Each rejection hurt, but he steeled himself, determined to press on. In the afternoons, he would attend Mrs. Collins' class, absorbing every word, every lesson, with all the focus he could muster. As days turned into weeks, Miguel's progress was slow but steady. He learned to introduce himself, to ask simple questions, and even to read basic signs. Yet, each step forward seemed to reveal how much farther he still had to go. He found himself frustrated, fumbling over phrases that sounded smooth in Mrs. Collins' voice but came out jumbled in his own. One day, during a pronunciation exercise, Miguel struggled with the word opportunity. His tongue twisted around the syllables, the unfamiliar sounds refusing to fall into place. The class chuckled softly, and though it was light-hearted, Miguel felt a sting of embarrassment. Mrs. Collins noticed his discomfort and gently corrected him, her encouragement steadying him. Yet, despite the difficulties, Miguel felt a small sense of achievement each time he managed to communicate something, even if only in broken English. One afternoon, he needed to ask directions from a store clerk, and those words were imperfect. The clerk understood him. This minor victory brought a swell of pride, reinforcing his commitment. At home, Gabriel and Sophia began to notice the changes in their father. Gabriel, who was picking up English quickly at school, started sharing new words with Miguel, eager to teach his father what he'd learned. Miguel cherished these moments, grateful for the chance to bond with his children through their shared learning. Isabella also joined in, learning simple phrases alongside him. Her quiet presence by his side bolstered him, reminding him that this journey was not his alone. Together they sat at the kitchen table after the children were in bed, practicing vocabulary and stumbling over verbs. They would often share a laugh over their mistakes, their shared struggle drawing them closer. As Miguel drifted to sleep each night, he felt the tension of the day melt away, replaced by a growing sense of purpose. Though each word was a struggle, every moment spent learning felt like a step toward the future he had envisioned for his family. One evening, as Miguel was practicing his English homework at the kitchen table, Gabriel sat across from him, watching closely. Miguel had been struggling with simple sentences, the words tangling together in ways that made him doubt his progress. Gabriel, however, seemed curious, his bright eyes studying his father's every move. "Papa, can I help you?" Gabriel asked, his words clear and confident in English. For a moment, Miguel was taken aback. His son, barely 7 years old, was already more comfortable with the language than he was. The realization stirred a mixture of pride and sorrow within him. Miguel nodded, and Gabriel eagerly explained a few of the phrases his father was struggling with, pronouncing them slowly and carefully. Miguel repeated the words, his son's patience a balm to his insecurities. Though he was grateful for Gabriel's help, a seed of worrying took root. How long would it be before his children could communicate better with others than with him? The thought of that distance, of the potential gap between them, gnawed at his heart. Later that night, as he lay in bed beside Isabella, he shared his worries with her. She listened quietly, her hand tracing comforting patterns along his arm. "Gabriel is learning fast," he asked, "but he looks up to you. Don't let this fear hold you back. Use it to push you forward," she encouraged, her voice steady and warm. Her words echoed in his mind, strengthening his resolve. This language wasn't just about work. It was about keeping his family connected, about being present for every story, every lesson, every conversation his children would have. With renewed determination, Miguel threw himself into his English studies with greater intensity. Every day he carried a small notebook where he would jot down new words he encountered, practicing them as he went about his errands. He began speaking to clerks at stores, attempting simple exchanges and greeting neighbors in the hallways. Each interaction was small, but every time he succeeded, it felt like a small victory. One afternoon, Miguel returned to the construction site where he had been initially rejected. He recognized a few familiar faces and decided to try again, this time armed with a few more words. Nervously, he approached the foreman and explained in his broken English that he was still looking for work. The foreman, surprised by Miguel's progress, listened with mild interest. Miguel held his breath as the foreman paused, considering him for a moment. "We need help cleaning up around here. It's temporary, but if you do well, there might be more," he said, handing Miguel a set of gloves and a hard hat. Relief and pride filled Miguel as he accepted the work, grateful for even the smallest opportunity. Though the work was demanding and the hours were long, Miguel took pride in every task, eager to prove himself. Each day, he practiced his English with the other workers, picking up new phrases and learning construction terms that would help him in his job. For the first time since arriving in the United States, he felt a sense of belonging, however small. Returning home at evening, Miguel shared his news with Isabella and the children, their faces lighting up with pride. Gabriel clapped his hands, excitedly telling Miguel, "I knew you could do it, Papa." The words, so simple yet so affirming, filled Miguel's heart with renewed hope. That night, as he looked out over the city from their small apartment window, Miguel felt a glimmer of the future. He had envisioned a life where he and his family would thrive, where the language barriers would fade, and where their dreams could take root. It was only the beginning, but for the first time, it felt within reach. As the days passed, Miguel settled into his new routine. Each morning, he worked long hours at the construction site, performing tasks that demanded both strength and precision. In the afternoons, he continued attending MRs. Colin's English classes, his focus sharper than ever. The steady rhythm provided him with a sense of purpose, but it also came at a cost. Between work, classes, and late-night study sessions, his energy waned. He found himself battling constant exhaustion, yet he refused to slow down, driven by the promise he had made to his family. At home, Isabella began to notice the toll it was taking on him. His shoulders slumped, dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his usually cheerful demeanor grew somber. She urged him to rest, worried about his health, but Miguel waved her off, determined to push through. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at work, Miguel returned home only to find that he could barely keep his eyes open at the dinner table. His hands trembled as he reached for his glass of water, and his head felt heavy. Gabriel and Sophia watched him with concern, sensing that something was wrong. Isabella placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice gentle but firm. "Miguel, you need to take care of yourself. This isn't sustainable." Miguel forced a tired smile, trying to reassure her. "I can handle it. This is for all of us." But deep down, he felt the strain. He knew he couldn't keep up this pace forever, yet the fear of slowing down and losing momentum weighed on him. Over the following days, he struggled to balance his commitments. He missed an English class due to a shift that ran late, and the frustration gnawed at him. He had begun to see small progress, tiny victories that gave him hope, but every setback felt like a step backward. Yet, each time he felt tempted to ease his workload, the image of Gabriel and Sophia's futures reminded him why he had to keep pushing. A month into his routine, Miguel received an invitation to attend a parent-teacher conference at Gabriel's school. Excited to hear about his son's progress, he marked the date on his calendar and took the day off work. Despite his growing confidence in basic English, he still felt a knot of anxiety as he entered the school, surrounded by parents conversing fluently with teachers. When it was his turn, he met with Gabriel's teacher, Miss Harper, a kind woman who spoke slowly and clearly, sensing Miguel's hesitation. She praised Gabriel's improvement, particularly his grasp of English. Miguel listened, pride swelling in his chest. But as the conversation continued, the language barrier became evident. Harper used words Miguel didn't fully understand, and he struggled to piece together the meaning. At one point, Gabriel turned to his teacher, interpreting for his father, explaining what Harper was saying with the ease of a child already fluent in English. Miguel's heart sank as he realized that his son was acting as the bridge between him and the world. The realization hit him hard. His own child was helping him, reversing the roles he had once envisioned. The sting of that moment stayed with him, filling him with a renewed resolve and a deep sadness. When they returned home, Miguel found himself quiet and reflective, his mind replaying the moment in the school. That night, as he lay in bed, he struggled with his pride, acknowledging that he needed to work harder, smarter, not just for a job, but to ensure that he could be there for his children in every way. The next morning, he woke up with a clear purpose. He approached Ms. Collins and asked her if there were additional resources he could use outside of class. She offered him supplementary materials, 10 suggested one-on-one sessions for targeted practice. Grateful, Miguel began dedicating extra time to these sessions, sharpening his focus on the language. Little by little, he noticed his improvement. Words that once felt foreign on his tongue started to flow with more ease. And though the progress was small, it was enough to stoke his determination. Miguel knew the journey was far from over, but he was beginning to feel the foundations of a new life taking shape. Chapter 9. A shared goal. 3,000 words. Miguel's commitment to learning English was becoming a family affair. One evening, as he practiced his vocabulary at the kitchen table, Isabella joined him, quietly studying her own notes. Miguel watched in surprise as she repeated English phrases under her breath, her brows knitted in concentration. Noticing his gaze, Isabella looked up and gave a small smile. "I've been learning too," she admitted. "I didn't want to tell you at first, but I thought maybe I could help." Miguel felt a surge of gratitude. Knowing Isabella was willing to share in this struggle filled him with renewed strength. They began to practice together each evening after the children were asleep, sharing the small book of vocabulary words Mrs. Collins had given Miguel. They would quiz each other, laughing at their mispronunciations and celebrating each new phrase learned. As the days passed, Miguel and Isabella's shared learning sessions became a time of bonding and quiet encouragement. They revisited simple words and phrases together, and Miguel found that learning alongside her made the journey feel less isolating. They spoke slowly, breaking down the language barrier one word at a time, united by a shared goal. In these moments, Miguel realized that their dreams for a better future extended beyond financial security. They wanted to fully integrate into their new world, to share in their children's lives without barriers. Each word learned felt like a step closer, and each shared laugh reminded them of the strength they drew from each other. The language barrier, though still present, began to feel less like an insurmountable wall and more like a challenge they could tackle together. One afternoon, after his regular English class, Miguel was packing up when he heard a friendly voice call out to him. Turning, he saw Raj, a fellow student who had joined the class a few weeks earlier. Raj was an immigrant from India, and his story was not unlike Miguel's. He had left his family back home to build a new life in the United States, and, like Miguel, he faced the struggle of adapting to a new language and culture. "Would you like to practice together sometime?" Raj asked, his smile warm and encouraging. Grateful for the offer, Miguel agreed, and over the next few days, they began meeting after class to practice conversational English. Together, they stumbled through phrases and shared stories of their journeys, their laughter bridging the gaps in their sentences. Raj quickly became a friend, and Miguel found comfort in their shared experiences. Raj's encouragement and humor made the challenges feel less daunting, and Miguel found himself opening up, sharing his fears and hopes. Raj, too, had a family he was working hard to support from afar, and he understood the weight of the dreams Miguel held for his own family. As they met regularly, Miguel noticed that his confidence was growing. Speaking with Raj allowed him to test his English in a supportive, judgment-free space, and each practice session felt like progress. Raj would often point out new expressions or correct Miguel's grammar with kindness, and Miguel reciprocated, helping Raj with phrases he had mastered. In time, their small practice sessions attracted the attention of other classmates who joined in, forming a tight-knit study group. They exchanged tips, shared resources, and encouraged one another, their camaraderie lifting the weight of isolation each of them felt. The group became a source of strength for Miguel, and the connections he built within it began to change his perspective. Learning English was no longer a solitary struggle. It was a journey he was sharing with friends who understood the importance of every small victory. Through these connections, Miguel felt his resolve strengthen. He was not just learning for himself. He was part of a community of dreamers, each fighting for their own American dream. And as he returned home each night to share these stories with Isabella, he realized how far he had come and how far he was willing to go, not only for his family, but for the friendships that now fueled his journey. Miguel's hard work at the construction site was paying off. His supervisors noticed his dedication, and though his English was still limited, they began trusting him with more responsibilities. One day, his boss, Mr. Lawson assigned him a new task that involved reading a set of instructions in English. The document was full of unfamiliar terms, and Miguel felt the familiar churn of anxiety in his stomach. He wanted to impress Mr. Lawson to prove that he was capable, but the fear of making a mistake held him back. Determined not to falter, Miguel approached Raj and a few classmates for help, gathering after class to review the instructions. They worked through the phrases slowly, translating where needed, and Miguel took detailed notes. With their support, he managed to grasp the basics of what was required, though it was clear that completing the task correctly would push him out of his comfort zone. The next morning, he arrived at the site early, ready to tackle the assignment. Armed with his notes and the translated instructions, Miguel dove into the task, his mind focused on each detail. He worked slowly, checking his notes frequently, and tried to remember the phrases he had practiced with Raj. But as the hours passed, fatigue and self-doubt began to creep in, his confidence wavering. Just as he was about to give up, Mr. Lawson came by to check on his progress. Miguel braced himself, fearing the worst. To his surprise, Mr. Lawson offered a few words of encouragement, noticing Miguel's meticulous attention to detail. Though his words were simple, they reminded Miguel of his capabilities. Bolstered by the support from his boss and his friends, Miguel pressed on, completing the task by the end of the day. It wasn't perfect, but he had done it. Returning home, Miguel shared the day's events with Isabella, his voice tinged with pride. The moment may have been small, but it marked a turning point. He had proven to himself that he could handle responsibility, even if it meant struggling through his limited English. And though the journey was far from over, he felt a renewed sense of faith in his ability to overcome each new challenge. One evening, after Miguel had returned from work and was winding down with his English notes, Gabriel approached him with a hesitant smile. "Papa, can we study English together?" Gabriel asked, holding up a workbook from school. Miguel looked at his son, feeling a swell of emotion at the request. They sat together at the kitchen table, Gabriel proudly sharing what he had learned at school. He recited simple phrases and asked Miguel to repeat them, his young voice full of encouragement. Miguel felt a role reversal, but instead of feeling embarrassed, he was proud to see his son's eagerness. Sophia soon joined them, bringing her own book, and the three of them practiced together, filling the room with laughter. For Miguel, these moments felt like reassurance. His children were not only proud of him, but actively wanted to help him, sharing their own learning journey with him. He realized that, in their eyes, he wasn't just their father. He was also someone brave enough to take on a challenge, someone they could look up to. Later that night, as he tucked Gabriel and Sophia into bed, Gabriel looked up at him with an expression of pure admiration. "You're doing great, Papa. I know you'll learn all the English soon." Miguel felt a surge of warmth, knowing that his children saw his efforts, that they were with him every step of the way. As he joined Isabella in the living room, he shared the evening's events, his voice full of pride. They sat in quiet reflection, both aware of the impact their journey was having on their children. Each word he learned was a bridge, not only to their new life in America, but also to a deeper connection within their family. Miguel realized that his struggle wasn't just about integration or employment. It was about setting an example for his children, teaching them resilience and dedication through his actions. In that moment, he felt a renewed commitment, a quiet determination to keep pushing forward. The challenges would continue, but now, more than ever, he knew that he wasn't alone in facing them. Several months into his journey, Miguel's confidence had grown significantly. He had come a long way, both in his English and in his work at the construction site, where he had been given more responsibilities. So when M.R. Lawson approached him about a potential promotion, Miguel was thrilled. The position came with better pay and benefits, but it required passing an English proficiency test. For Miguel, this was a chance to secure a more stable future for his family, a stepping stone toward the life he had envisioned. Miguel dedicated himself to preparing for the test, spending every spare moment reviewing vocabulary and grammar. He sought extra help from M.R.'s Collins, who provided him with practice materials, and his study group offered words of encouragement. He knew it would be challenging, but he was determined to give it his best effort. On the day of the test, Miguel arrived early, his heart racing with a mixture of excitement and nerves. The questions seemed manageable at first, but as he progressed, the language grew more complex with phrases he had not encountered before. Anxiety began to cloud his thoughts, making it harder to focus. The time ticked away, and by the end, he wasn't sure how he had done. When he received the results a week later, his heart sank. He hadn't passed. The disappointment hit him like a wave, erasing all the confidence he had built. For the first time since starting his journey, Miguel felt truly defeated. He thought of Gabriel and Sophia, of the promise he had made to himself to provide for them, and the failure felt overwhelming. Returning home at evening, he struggled to hide his disappointment. Isabella saw through his attempt to remain composed and sat beside him, offering a quiet presence as he shared the news. She held his hand, her warmth a comfort amid his frustration. "Miguel, this isn't the end. You've come so far, and this is just one step. We'll find another way." Though her words soothed him, the disappointment lingered. He questioned his ability to succeed, wondering if he would ever truly belong in this new world. But as he looked at Isabella and remembered the faith Gabriel and Sophia had in him, he knew he couldn't give up. This setback was painful, but it wasn't the end of his journey. In the days following the test results, Miguel struggled to shake the weight of disappointment. But as he reflected on his journey, he began to see his progress differently. Yes, he had failed this test, but he had achieved so much more than he initially believed possible. He remembered the small victories, the phrases he had learned, the friendships he had made, the pride in Gabriel's eyes. He realized that his journey wasn't defined by a single test, but by his resilience and growth along the way. Encouraged by this new perspective, Miguel decided to adjust his focus. Instead of trying to rush his learning to meet external expectations, he chose to concentrate on practical skills he could use daily. He discussed this new approach with MRs. Collins, who helped him design a study plan centered on conversational English, job-specific vocabulary, and comprehension exercises that could help him in real-life scenarios. As he began this new phase of learning, Miguel found that his progress felt more natural. He started practicing at work, engaging in brief conversations with coworkers, and tackling tasks that required English with renewed confidence. These small, consistent efforts became the backbone of his growth, and he found himself understanding more each day. Isabella noticed the change in him. Gone was the shadow of disappointment, replaced by a quiet determination. She continued to study alongside him in the evenings, and together they practiced simple conversations they could use at work or in their daily lives. Their shared moments felt lighter, more enjoyable, as they learned at a pace that suited them both. One afternoon, Miguel's boss, M.R. Lawson, approached him with a new project. Though hesitant at first, Miguel accepted, using the job as an opportunity to put his practical English to the test. The task required him to communicate with vendors and ensure that materials arrived on time. He found himself relying on the vocabulary he had studied, and to his surprise, he managed the interactions successfully. Each completed task felt like a triumph, reinforcing his confidence. At the end of the day, Miguel returned home, proud of his efforts. Isabella greeted him at the door, her eyes filled with pride as he recounted the day's events. Together, they celebrated his renewed sense of purpose, the quiet strength he had found in his journey. Miguel understood now that his success wasn't measured by a test or a promotion, but by the everyday challenges he was learning to overcome. As they sat together that evening, Miguel felt a renewed commitment to his dream. It was no longer just a vision of the future. It was something he was building, one step at a time. Months had passed since Miguel had begun focusing on practical English skills, and his progress was evident to everyone around him. Conversations at work felt smoother, and his interactions with neighbors and classmates held a newfound ease. With each task he completed, his confidence grew, solidifying his belief in his own capabilities. His family, friends, and co-workers began to notice not only his improved language skills, but also the quiet determination that had carried him through every setback. One day, as Miguel was finishing a shift at the construction site, Mr. Lawson approached him with an unexpected request. They had an important delivery scheduled, and due to a staffing issue, no one was available to communicate with the delivery team, Mr. Lawson asked Miguel if he could handle it, trusting him to navigate the situation in English. Miguel felt a moment of hesitation, but accepted the challenge, knowing this was an opportunity to put everything he had learned into practice. Miguel approached the delivery team with a calm determination, recalling the phrases he had practiced and the vocabulary specific to his work. The conversation flowed naturally, and he surprised himself with how confidently he navigated each question, even resolving a minor issue with the shipment. The delivery team thanked him, and as they drove off, Miguel felt a wave of accomplishment wash over him. Word of Miguel's success quickly spread among his co-workers, and they congratulated him, their respect for him evident in their smiles and handshakes. Mr. Lawson approached him later, praising his performance and hinting at more responsibilities in the future. Miguel felt an immense pride, not just in the achievement, but in the realization that he had truly broken through the language barrier that had once seemed insurmountable. When he arrived home that evening, his family greeted him with excitement, eager to hear about his day. As he recounted the story, Gabriel and Sophia beamed with pride, and Isabella's eyes shone with tears of joy. They celebrated together, knowing that this moment marked a turning point not just for Miguel, but for the entire family. Miguel had proven to himself and to his loved ones that the dream they had pursued was becoming a reality, built on a foundation of resilience, hard work, and love. That night, as Miguel lay in bed beside Isabella, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The setbacks, the sleepless nights, the small victories, and the friendships he had formed, all of it had led to this moment. He felt grateful for the struggle, knowing that it had shaped him into a stronger, more capable version of himself. In his heart, Miguel knew that he was no longer the man who had arrived in this country, uncertain and afraid. He was now a part of his new world, a man who had earned his place not just through language but through perseverance. And as he drifted to sleep, he felt a profound sense of peace, ready to embrace whatever challenges the future held.